Picture this. You're on a ship in the middle of the Indian Ocean, the waves are calm, the sky is clear, and the radar suddenly beeps. A small dot appears. At first, it looks harmless. But then it speeds up, faster and faster. Your blood runs cold. Because you already know what it is: Somali pirates. And once you've seen their speedboats, it's usually too late. For the crew of the American cargo ship Maersk Alabama, this nightmare became real on April 8, 2009. They were carrying humanitarian aid, passing for 140 kilometers off the Somali coast when the radar lit up. The crew knew the drill. This was not their first encounter. Just the previous day, two similar boats had tried to attack. Both times they had managed to outrun them. But now, the boat was too close, too fast, too determined. Captain Richard Phillips immediately set off the alarm. The crew scrambled into the safe room, but not everyone made it in time. Suddenly, they heard the clatter of a rope ladder hooking onto the ship's side. The first pirate climbed aboard. He was only 18 years old. His name was Abdiwali Abdikadir Musi, and in his hands, he carried an AK-47. 3 more followed him. Within minutes, they surrounded the captain and his men, declaring they didn't want blood, they only wanted money. But what started as a robbery soon turned into an international hostage crisis. At one point, Musi, the leader, was overpowered by the crew, stabbed in the hand by the chief engineer, and locked in the safe room. But that small victory only enraged the other pirates. Desperate, they forced Captain Phillips into a lifeboat, dragging him with them into open waters. The hijacking of the Maersk Alabama would soon become one of the most famous piracy stories in history, even inspiring the 2013 Hollywood film Captain Phillips. But the question is, why did boys like Musi, barely adults, risk their lives in such dangerous missions? Why did piracy explode in Somalia in the first place? To answer that, we need to travel back, far beyond the Maersk Alabama, into Somalia's dark history. Somalia sits on the Horn of Africa, at one of the most strategic locations in the world. The Gulf of Aden and the Indian Ocean pass right through its waters, carrying nearly 1/5 of global shipping trade. But despite this, Somalia has been one of the world's most unstable nations. After gaining independence in 1960, clan rivalries and political instability quickly tore it apart. By 1991, the government had collapsed completely. Rival clans fought for control, millions starved, and more than 350,000 people died in a single year from famine and disease. With no central authority, Somalia's coastline, one of the richest fishing zones in the world, became a free-for-all. Tuna, sardines, shrimp, rays, all were stolen by foreign trawlers. According to UN estimates, seafood worth $300 million was plundered every year. The foreign vessels used massive steel drag nets that destroyed coral reefs and wiped out marine life, leaving Somali fishermen helpless. When locals tried to fight back, they were attacked with water cannons and bullets. And then came something even worse: toxic waste. Since the 1980s, European companies had been secretly dumping uranium, mercury, lead, and nuclear waste on Somalia's shores. Why? Because dumping 1 ton of waste in Europe cost $250. In Somalia, it was $2.50. Local warlords were bribed with weapons in what became known as the guns for waste deal. By the time the 2004 tsunami cracked open hidden barrels of toxic sludge, thousands of Somalis were poisoned. Doctors reported a sudden surge of cancer cases, strange rashes, bleeding gums, and brain hemorrhages. Imagine being a fisherman in Somalia. Your fish are gone, stolen by foreign ships, your children are starving, and the waters you depend on are poisoned. What would you do? For many Somali men, the answer was simple: they armed themselves. At first, they called themselves Coast Guards, defending their waters against intruders. But once they realized ransom money could be made, piracy became a booming business. What began as fishermen in small boats soon turned into organized pirate gangs with investors, recruiters, negotiators, and financiers. Poor boys as young as 16 were trained to hijack ships. In Puntland, the northern tip of Somalia, piracy became so profitable that a tiny fishing village, was transformed into the pirate capital of the world. These pirates weren't just looters. They ran their operations like corporations. Investors funded their missions, young boys carried them out, guards watched the hostages, and translators handled negotiations. Ransom payments, sometimes millions of dollars, were parachuted down from planes. Half went to the pirates, a third to investors, the rest to middlemen and guards. In some cases, small amounts were distributed to the poor, giving pirates a Robin Hood image. Many locals admired them. In their own language, they called themselves Bada Dinta Bada, saviors of the sea, but the world didn't see them as heroes. To the world, they were ruthless hijackers. Between 2005 and 2012, Somali pirates made more than $400 million. One Saudi supertanker paid $3 million. A Greek tanker paid nearly $10 million. By 2011, piracy had grown into Somalia's most lucrative industry. And this brings us back to Captain Phillips, held hostage on a tiny lifeboat by armed pirates, with the eyes of the world watching. What happened next would involve Navy SEALs, snipers, and one of the most daring rescue missions in modern history. But before I take you into that high-stakes showdown, let me ask you something. If you've been hooked by this story so far, then make sure you hit that subscribe button right now. Because the second half of this story is even more shocking, and you don't want to miss it. The lifeboat carrying Captain Phillips drifted through the night, shadowed by the USS Bainbridge, a massive American warship. Reinforcements soon arrived: the USS Halliburton and USS Boxer. The Navy had surrounded the pirates, but negotiations were tense. The pirates demanded $2 million, threatening to kill Phillips if it wasn't paid. For days, the standoff continued. At one point, Phillips even tried to escape by jumping into the sea at night. But the pirates caught him again, firing shots into the water. Time was running out. The pirates grew agitated, their fuel was running low, and Musi, their leader, was suffering from his stab wound. In desperation, Musi asked the Americans for medical help. Navy SEALs treated his injury and tried to convince him to release Phillips, but the other pirates refused. Then, as strong winds pushed the lifeboat closer to the USS Bainbridge, the pirates made a fatal mistake. They exposed themselves just long enough. 3 Navy snipers, positioned on the warship, fired in perfect unison. Within seconds, 3 pirates lay dead. Captain Phillips was pulled to safety. 18-year-old Musi, the only survivor, was captured. He was later tried in the United States, sentenced to 33 years in prison, and remains there to this day. The rescue of Captain Phillips marked a turning point. The world's powers decided piracy could no longer be ignored. In 2009, the U.S. led an international naval mission called Task Force 151. NATO and the European Union launched their own counter-piracy missions. China, Russia, India, and other nations sent warships to patrol Somali waters. By 2011, Somali piracy was at its peak, with 237 incidents. But within 2 years, the numbers dropped drastically. By 2017, piracy had almost disappeared. The reason wasn't just warships. Shipping companies started hiring armed guards on cargo ships, and this simple step changed everything. Pirates in small speedboats were no match for trained sharpshooters positioned high on massive vessels. Not a single ship with armed guards was successfully hijacked. Barbed wires, foam cannons, sonic devices, and secure safe rooms for crews became standard. Pirates found themselves running out of targets, but piracy didn't vanish completely. In 2023, as U.S. Navy ships diverted their focus to the conflict in Yemen, Somali pirates resurfaced. In December, they hijacked a cargo vessel after years of silence. In early 2024, Indian Navy forces rescued hostages from another hijacking, capturing 35 pirates. More recently, a Bangladeshi ship and even a Chinese vessel were taken, with millions in ransom exchanged. Clearly, the story isn't over, and yet, if you ask Somali people, many still see piracy as a form of justice. A survey showed that nearly 70% of Somalis supported piracy as national defense. They argue that real pirates were the foreign trawlers who stole their fish, and the corporations that poisoned their waters with toxic waste. To them, piracy was resistance, but here's the painful truth. Not all pirates were poor fishermen. Many were local gangsters who grew rich, bought luxury cars, dabbled in drugs, and disrupted Somali society even further. The revolution that started as justice turned into another cycle of crime. That's the tragedy of Somalia, and this is why piracy remains such a haunting story. It's not just about ships and ransoms, it's about injustice, desperation, and survival. It's about how poverty and corruption create monsters out of ordinary men. And it's about how the world, even today, has not cleaned up the toxic waste, has not paid compensation, and has not addressed the root causes. Somali piracy is a story of David and Goliath, but with no clear heroes and no easy answers. It asks us a question: when the world abandons you and survival becomes impossible, what choices are left? Now, I want to hear from you. Do you think Somali pirates were villains, or were they forced into this life by the crimes of foreign powers? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one of them, and I'd love to know where you stand.